Hello everyone. Today I'm gonna talk about Argentina's economy and some macroeconomic indicators. To begin, Argentina's GDP has witnessed many fluctuations in the last 25 years. For example, in 1989, the annual inflation exceeded 3,000%, and in 2000, unemployment rate rose to 14%. In 2001, there is massive withdrawal of money from banks to buy dollars, as there was high depreciation of the currency. Also in 2002, there was a high depreciation of currencies that led to over 40% of inflation, and the GDP fell by 10%. In 2020, the COVID pandemic resulted in 9% drop in the GDP. Macroeconomic indicators. Let's talk about inflation rate and the money supply. When we are talking about inflation rate, we should mention high prices. We should mention decrease of availability of goods in markets, and also less exchange rate. For example, as we mentioned in 1989, the inflation rate reached 3,000%, and in 2020, the inflation accelerates and the prices changed overnight because of COVID-19 pandemic. Also, as we see in this graph, in 2021, inflation reaches 51%. In 2022, inflation hitting over 100%. In 2023, the official exchange rate was at 350 of peso to 1 USD, and the blue dollar was at 700 of peso to 1 USD. So there was a high depreciation of the currency. The second indicator is interest rate. When we are talking about interest rate, some of the monetary policy of Argentina that it made a high interest rate to encourage more people to save their money in banks, and consequently increase the money supply. But on the other side, this will decrease the GDP because the investment will decrease as investors won't have many loans, and also the exports will decrease because of less exchange rate. So the central bank recently has reduced the interest rate from 35% to 32%, and it was the 8th interest cut in December 2023. Unemployment rate also, because of decreased investment and decreased businesses, for sure unemployment rate will increase. For example, in 2002, it was 19%. and also in 2013 it was 7%, and because of the pandemic in 2020, the unemployment rate was very high, reaching 11%, and it decreased again in 2023 to reach 6.18%. So as we see in this figure, it is fluctuating, but the deficit is more than the increases. The labor productivity, as we mentioned, there is high unemployment rate, so the labor productivity will decrease. So for example, in 2018, it hit a low record of -7%. And also the labor participation of both genders, male and female, has decreased. For example, for male decreased in 2020, dropped to 70%, and for women decreased in 2023 to just 50% were employed. When we are talking about exchange rates, we notice that there is fluctuation in the exchange rates. And when the exchange rates, as we mentioned, decrease, the exports will decrease, and GDP growth also will decrease. As we notice in 2020, there is a less GDP growth valued by -9%, and the exchange rate was 75 of peso to one United States dollar. Also in 2023, the exchange rate was 350 of peso to one United States dollar. Another indicator is exports. Exports has a positive relationship with GDP. When exports increase, the GDP will increase. As we see in this figure, there's in the period between 2000 and 2010, there is a high share of exports in GDP, like 20%. And this rate decreased in 2015, reaching just 11%, and export share increased again in 2024 by 30%. Lastly, the trade balance. Trade balance equal exports minus imports. So when the exports increased and the imports decreased, the trade balance value will increase. Also, as we see in this figure, there's a lot of fluctuations, and there is high points in the years between the 2001 and the 2009, reaching a peak of $16 billion. Also, there is some deficits like in 2020 because of COVID pandemic. And in 2023, there was a deficit of $9 billion. As a conclusion, a century ago, Argentina was among the wealthiest nations, but during this period, it faces the persistent economic recession because of currency depreciations and hyperinflation. Also, despite the recent policy changes that which included interest rate, also there is inflation and recession in Argentina. The third point that the government's rigorous fiscal measures have succeeded to reduce the inflation to some extent, but there is increasing of social inequality and unemployment rate and the poverty rates. Last point is Argentina's weak integration into global trade and the high reliance on agriculture exports continue to slow long-term progress. This is a reference of our information. Thank you so much for watching this video.